All right, I'm here with Lucas Joppa from Microsoft Research. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm a scientist in Microsoft Research, but in particular, I'm a scientist in a group called Computational Ecology and Environmental Science, which is a group based in the Cambridge, UK research lab. And so that's a job title that probably most people watching this video have never heard of before. The fact that Microsoft actually has a group of computational ecologists in doing peer research.
And what exactly is a computational ecologist?
Sure. So I would like to simply be able to say a computational ecologist is just an ecologist, but it's probably more truthful to say that it's a bit more of an ecologist of the future. Traditionally, it's really been a science dominated by natural history, right? People going out into the wild, into the woods, and observing things for a long time, and coming up with observations and hypotheses, and then trying to bring those into an experimental setting and testing them to prove or disprove their hypothesis. But as the interest in the environment has scaled up, and as the realization that that everything is connected at scales larger than just maybe the woods behind your house, we've had to really scale up our thinking. And to do that, we have to say, okay, let's start looking at things from a global perspective, at high resolutions, and let's try and take all of these data that are coming in from sensors and scientists and lab notebooks and all this kind of stuff and put it together. Well, you're just not going to do that at the whiteboard anymore. You need really strong computational methods, and computational workflows. So.
How did you get involved in this field? I know that you said once that you took a class on extinction that really motivated you. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So my background is probably quite different than most people sitting in Microsoft Research. I come from the woods of far northern Wisconsin, 30 miles from a stoplight, running around and outside as much as I could, avoiding school as much as I could. And I was not a computationally minded person whatsoever. I was anything but. I didn't have my first computer until sometime during my undergraduate years. We never had one in the house. We never had a TV in the house, and so I came to computational ecology and computational methods through as a side product of my passion, which is trying to figure out how to conserve ecological systems. So, like you said, I was an undergraduate at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I was studying. Well, I didn't know what I was studying, to be honest, like most undergrads. And as part of my general education requirements, I needed to take a course in the zoology department. I stumbled upon one called Extinction of Species, which I thought sounded interesting. And I sat there for the first 45-minute lecture, and I'd never heard somebody talk about something in school that was so close to what I found to be important, for what I could see as kind of a life mission. I went up after that class. I said, "How do I do this?" Basically, I think I took the professor by surprise a little bit, but we were friends today, and he started me down a process of studying wildlife ecology and zoology, a 2-year stint in Malawi in the Peace Corps, working for their Department of National Parks and Wildlife, and then a PhD in ecology at Duke University's Nicholas School of Environment.
And then what led you to Microsoft Research?
So Microsoft Research was a bit of serendipity, a bit of luck, and a bit of hard work and preparation, I think. I never would have sat down 10 years ago and said, my goal is to be a computational ecologist at Microsoft Research. Although I hope that within a few years that we're recognizable enough that people in undergraduate institutions might have that goal. I think that would be a fantastic thing to see happen. But I had spent a lot of my time working on ecological networks, so standard graph theory sorts of questions, because what I was really interested in is, what if one of those nodes in a network is a species, right? And what if the edges between those nodes were interactions, maybe feeding interactions? And so we call those things food webs, or we used to call them food webs, now we call them ecological networks. But I was really interested in what happens if I take one of those nodes out and what's the model that describes how the interactions flow across the network, and what's the end result of that, because that's a species extinction, right? And that goes right back to that undergraduate course that I took. So I was really interested in those methods. The Computational Ecology group was at that time run by one of the foremost experts in the world, a guy named Rich Williams, an expert in ecological networks. He's a fantastic guy. He'd helped set up our group, and I got in touch with him. Our research interests really clicked, and I went, in the standard interview process. I met all the people in the Computational Ecology group, and it really just felt like, this is the place. Kind of, these are my kind of intellectual kin, as it were, and I've been there ever since.
And what's the value that computer science gives to environmental sciences?
We just can't handle, first of all, and this is kind of boring, but it's pragmatic, we just can't handle the amounts of data that are flowing at us anymore without embracing computer science and computational methods. But it's also becoming extremely difficult to derive information from those data without computational methods. So if I've got some sort of model with multiple parameters and different data sets, and I want to have some sort of hierarchical model structure and all of this kind of stuff, and so at the end of the day, I've got a model, I've got some data, and in a Bayesian framework, I want to confront that model with those data to how do I do that, right? I mean, I can write that out. I can describe the algorithm to you in conversation. I could write it on the board, whatever. But the methods to estimate the parameters in the model, I need my computer to do that. And that's just one small example.
Are there any major tipping points in the intersection of environmental and computer science that are leading to rapid advancements or realizations? What can you glean from all this information?
Yeah, so I think the tipping point that we're at now, there's two really interesting things there. The first is this merging of hardware and software. I think I've never been so excited to think about technology as I am now. The idea that hardware is no longer immutable. You can change it to meet your changing needs. I mean, a project I had nothing to do with, but I'm hugely excited about is something that came out of Microsoft Research called .NET Gadgeteer, which is this plug-and-play, build your own hardware device. And we're using those in our group quite a bit to build these one-off bespoke environmental monitoring systems. And you can write some simple code and put together some simple hardware, and suddenly you have something that's not so simple. You have a fairly sophisticated environmental monitoring device. And the fact that software is becoming much easier to work with, right? 20 years ago, you kind of needed to be a computer scientist to really truly embrace computational methods. And now people like me can take those things and go charging forward in our own research domains. So that's one area, and the other area is just this ubiquitous computing kind of things. We keep talking about ubiquitous computing as if it's something of the future. As if we aren't all walking around with smartphones in our pockets and tablets on our desks, and refrigerators that know when to cool down and when not to. I mean, ubiquitous computing is occurring right now. Computing will become even more ubiquitous, but it's already going on, and through things like crowdsourcing, trying to figure out what's going on in the natural world, it's never been easier, right? I can quickly engage legions of motivated individuals to go out and do things that they really want to do and feel passionate about contributing something back. And so things like just simply trying to figure out where species are, right? I can marry up machine learning style models and methods like active learning, and I can say, okay, I've got only a few data points about this species. I've got some rough and ready model that kind of describes its distribution across maybe the state of Washington according to some environmental variables like temperature and precipitation. But then using statistical computational methods, I can say, well, what's the next most important data point that I need, right? And I can then engage with active communities of people, and I can say, hey, you're the best person to go and get me this information. Bring it back, these aren't ideas that people haven't had before. It's just that everything's now available. Crowdsourcing in citizen science is accepted. We are all running around with some sort of connected devices, whether they be tablets or smartphones, and the machine learning and AI techniques are coming along as well, and it's really just creating this exciting time, even for an environmental scientist.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Tell me about the role that machine learning and AI play in your work.
Sure. So I gave you a brief example in one of your previous questions, talking about species distribution modeling and harnessing the power of the crowd to answer some of this stuff. But we actually had a paper just a few months back in the journal Science using some standard AI techniques to answer a question of international conservation importance. And it's interesting because I just try to use whatever computational methods I need to answer the questions that I'm interested in. And it wasn't until I saw a news story saying AI for conservation that I realized, oh yeah, these techniques actually are, that's the intellectual heritage here. So in this instance, we're trying to ask a question, which is simply there's a convention called the Convention on Biological Diversity, which is a convention signed by over 200 countries agreeing to halt the loss of biodiversity by 2020, by the year 2020. And one of their goals is to set aside 17% of land in protected areas. And that's an area that I have worked a lot on in my time. How effective are protected areas? Where should you put them, et cetera, et cetera. But they have another goal, which is to protect 60% of plant species within protected areas by the year 2020. So nobody had ever asked that obvious question, which is, well, is that even possible? Can you protect 60% of plant species within 17% of the land area? Can you cram 60% of all plant species within such a small amount of area? So I wanted to ask that question. I wanted to ask that question about not just 17% of land area. I wanted to ask it about 7% and 8% and 28% and 38%. How many species can I cram into 28% of the land, 17%? And I wanted to build these nice accumulation curves and see how biodiversity really is distributed across the planet. And what do you turn to for that? You turn to greedy algorithms and genetic algorithms. And so we used greedy algorithms to try and build up iteratively, step by step, the optimal accumulation curve. And then we said, well, is our greedy algorithm actually optimal? And we turned to very classic AI techniques like genetic algorithms. And we said, okay, well, let's use these strongly computational methods to ask, at 17% of the land, what are the ways that we would pick the regions of the world apart and put them back together to maximize the total number of species in the least amount of area? So that's just one example of machine learning or AI techniques that are actually kind of, scaling up in relevance to international, biological treaties between countries. And I find that stuff really exciting.
So typically when we talk about sensors, we're talking about sensors in a device or even sensors in a data center where there's a power strip and there's networking. You're talking about sensors in remote locations. What are your challenges around that?
Yeah, so I think this saying gets repeated in all sorts of domains, but when I'm not at work, my whole life has been kind of dedicated to work and to racing bikes. And in bike racing, right, we have the saying, strong, light, and cheap, pick two, and the same kind of goes with devices, I don't know, power efficient, robust, and cheap. Pick two, and the problem is when you're working out in remote locations with resource constrained organizations and initiatives, you don't have the privilege of picking two. You need all three. You need devices that are power efficient, that are connected, and are robust to anything nature throws at them. And so we've been working on trying to solve some of those problems. I think one of the most interesting things that we've been doing is designing these bespoke GPS tracking devices, which are called Mataki. If you go to mataki.org, you can find out more about them. And they also set up a radio mesh network amongst all of the devices that are on animals out in the field. And so if I'm wearing one of the devices and you are, we're constantly downloading information from satellites about our location, and then we're also passing our information back and forth. So you kind of saturate the network that way, so that you really only have to come into contact with one of those devices to get the network's worth of information. But we're also doing things like working with unmanned aerial vehicles to operate as roaming base stations. So you can imagine a UAV flying around listening to these devices, right? And when it hears one, it flies over and downloads its information. And what's even kind of more incredible is it can, you can say, right now, have its autopilot software lock on to that device for the next 5 minutes and fly around, turn on your high definition cameras, bring all of that rich information back. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to marry up the kind of the coarse GPS, information that you're getting about how an animal moves through its environment with that really highly detailed contextualized information for 5 minutes about what's going on, what's the landscape look like, what are the other animals around it, what's it actually doing, and that's fantastic stuff. And it's causing us to think, well, not how would we model those data, or well, not what models would we use. It's more, what models can we come up with now? Because we never even thought that we would have that kind of information. So it's an exciting time.
What are some of the unlikely collaborations that have come from your research efforts?
Sure. So all sorts. Just really briefly, I'll tell you a real one. But just the other day, an engineer who works for me was busy stuffing one of these Mataki devices in a rat as it was being fed to a crocodile. So that's some strange stuff, because they're trying to tag crocodiles, and one way to do that is to put one in its stomach. So you're watching that and you're just kind of like, what is going on right now? But no, the serious answer to that question is a collaboration that I'm actually really, really proud of. That's last year. There's an organization called the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, the IUCN. It's the world's largest and oldest conservation organization, and it operates very much at the international level as an umbrella organization across governments and banks, international banks, and conservation NGOs. And they put out something called the Red List, which is, if you've ever picked up the newspaper and read 25% of plants are threatened with extinction or something like that, that's coming from the Red List. I think I'm safe to say it is the single most important data set on conservation. It's the result of over 10,000 scientists across the world uploading information about the species that they know about and their conservation status. So that's been going on for a long time. And last year, Microsoft was invited to come on board as the 10th partner to the Red List. We were the first corporation to be asked, and what was really gratifying about that is that we actually weren't asked because we're a corporation. Sure, yeah, the fact that we are Microsoft is fantastic for both parties, I think, for the resources that can be potentially mobilized. But the reason that we were asked is because we are the computational ecology group with the skills, the education, and I would like to think the passion to really drive some of this stuff forward. And so it's the 50th anniversary of the Red List next year, and I'm really excited that Microsoft's going to be able to be part of that celebration and part of that thinking about what the next 50 years are going to look like.
How has the use of spatial data changed the way scientists do computational environmental work?
Yeah, I think so. Spatial data is interesting because
Explain what spatial data is for someone who might not know.
yeah, so spatial data it's information on locations, right? X, Y coordinates, and what's interesting is outside of environmental science, the way spatial data is often treated is in my mind two kind of simplistic ways. One, we like to turn spatial information into grids, right? So if you go on big maps and you zoom in and out, you're looking at spatial information. Ecologists use spatial data probably more than any other domain because we're interested in where animals move, the spatial context of where they're doing whatever they're doing, and trying to bundle that all together and explicitly including that in our models as well. We're interested in figuring out how you use spatial data in a much richer way than has traditionally been kind of taken up before, and that's allowing us to push things like our own company's products, the fantastic geospatial capacity of SQL Server, for example, that thousands, probably tens of thousands or more, I don't know, I'm terrible with business numbers, but a lot of people and in the enterprise world are using these functions. We're trying to do science now that I think is using these products in the way that enterprise will want to use them 10 years from now, and I always find that to be a pretty strong rationale for myself about our utility here. So anyway, that's just a long, drawn-out answer to a simple question. But
what's the Holy Grail for this work? What is one of the things that you'd like to see happen in your lifetime or in the length of your career?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the Holy Grail is probably the Holy Grail of most scientific disciplines. I mean, we're interested in finding out as much information as we possibly can about what happened in the past, collecting as much information about what's going on right now, and being able to put all of that together and to try and figure out what's going to happen into the future. So my Holy Grail would be, that you could go to a mapping service, preferably Microsoft's, and zoom in and start asking questions about what's there in this place, what's there, and what used to be there, and what's going to be there, and what's the vegetation there? If it's agriculture, what's the crop? What's the projected crop yield? What's the projected crop yield under climate change scenarios? All of that kind of information, I think, is wildly useful, wildly important, and there's also a significant business rationale there. I mean, before I came to Microsoft, I had started up a company called Earth Audit, which was all about providing predictive information about the planet. Finding out that I could do the same thing, but for one of the world's most interesting and important technology companies was a no-brainer for me. So over I came. But it shouldn't come as any surprise then that my Holy Grail is about predictive information about the planet. We need it. Societies need it. Governments need it. Businesses need it. Individuals need it. I see it coming. So that's my Holy Grail. But there's a long way to go.
And what's next? What are some of the things on the horizon that you see?
One of the things that I think has a lot of legs is an initiative that we've started up called Technology for Nature. And it really is about trying to use technology to rapidly scale up the global response to biodiversity loss, which sounds kind of like a mouthful, but it encompasses or incorporates a lot of the things that we've been talking about today. It focuses really strongly on devices and algorithms and software and interacting with conservation organizations and other partners. And the reason that I think it's so exciting, and one of the reasons that I'm so excited to work at a place like Microsoft and Microsoft Research, is I come to work every day and it's impossible for me to ignore that I work with a group of some of the smartest, most dedicated, passionate people in the world, working on all sorts of things that I do not work on, that I don't want to work on, that maybe intellectually I'm incapable of working on. But for nearly every one of those things, I can imagine how it would be enormously useful for studying and helping to conserve ecological systems. And so technology for nature is a bit of an umbrella term. It talks about, or it represents a research agenda within our group, but it also represents a collaboration between the Zoological Society of London and the University of College London. All three of our organizations are really motivated to try and leverage all of the fantastic work that's going on out there. I mean, there's so much more to do than I can do, and then the people in the team that I work in can do. I have a personal passion for conserving Earth's natural systems, and so technology for nature, I think, really marries those two passions up quite well. And I'm excited about the next year. I think it'll be great.
Thanks for talking to us today.
Always a pleasure.